All right, so last week you kind of put me on the spot asking me what kind of animal I would be. And I said a monkey, and I lost sleep, to be honest with you. Because,
oh my gosh.
Well, of all the
no more
things
hard
I'm gonna
questions
be,
for you, Gary.
You know what? Maybe a wolf.
Oh, you're still thinking about what? Okay.
So I am.
So redo. What animal would you be? Your spirit animal, Gary?
I think I'd be a wolf, Melissa.
Wow. It only took you a week and a half to answer that question, but that's okay.
And for those of you who may not have listened, we discussed animals our last show, talking about how that plays into preparedness and emergency preparedness. But I have a question for you now.
Oh, okay. Shoot.
You probably have heard it before, but let me put you on the spot. What would you do if you won $1 billion in the lottery?
Ooh, if I won the lottery, I would definitely make sure that I could go to Disney all the time. Like I'd live in Walt Disney World, maybe Disneyland in California. I'd also be a full season ticket holder to the Boston Bruins. So I guess I would buy a property in Boston and make sure I could go to all the games, but then spend the rest of my time in Disney. And I guess make sure that my son is all taken care of and stuff.
You see, you thought that through quite a bit.
I just kind of listened to my heart there, Gare.
The reason I ask it is because we've all seen reporters go up to people standing in line to get those tickets.
Yeah, what would you do if you win? Oh, I have. The Powerball. What if you win this?
I'm going to win the Powerball. What would you do?
I would go into hiding so nobody asks for my money.
And you start to imagine what you're going to do. Some people would give it away, support their family.
Oh, I sounded like such a jerk. Now I know why you were staying up late. I'd give all my money away.
See,
that's the right thing to do. Now I'm going to think about this. People get like, all she cares about is her hockey and her Disney.
And her son and Disneyland, Disney World.
But you're right. I mean, I think when you get asked that question, you just sort of go into, wow, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
That's right. Yeah, it's the power of imagination. And that's kind of what I thought would be a good idea to talk about this week, is how we use that imagination for things that may happen. Oftentimes they don't. I think it's one in a, what?
Oh, it's. I think you have a better chance of being struck by lightning, I believe. I think I've said that factoid a million times over 15 years of reporting. It's something like that.
But the power of imagination when it comes to the lottery, but oftentimes we don't really think about the power of imagination as it relates to safety. And, over the last few shows we've spoken about a lot about safety and ways in which we can become safer in our own world. And I don't think we've ever really talked about that power of imagination as it relates to that.
Full disclosure, Gary loves Figment from Disney.
I do.
Just speaking of Disney, so I wasn't sure if Figment had anything to do with your thought process here.
Well, figment of your imagination is, I like Figment down there in Disney. And you're going to buy a spot down there and have access, so I can't wait for you to win the lottery. Yes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, from a cop perspective, how would you do you use imagination? Like, is that a tool in the toolkit?
Yeah, people think you go to the academy and you're trained, and you're trained in the rules and the laws and tactics, but a lot of your training really happens on an ongoing basis with two words. And it's the two words cops will always ask themselves is what if?
Oh, so like what if this scenario happens?
Right.
So you're trained early on to think like that.
We do, and a lot of it is survival. So it's not something that just law enforcement should practice. But I'll give you an example of it. When we pull over when we pull over cars and speeders or what have you, those are dangerous situations because the individual in the car knows a lot more about the car and what's going on inside the car than the officer does.
Wait, so because honestly, this has been my biggest, I've always had this question about law enforcement since getting into especially journalism. What goes through your mind when you pull somebody over? Even if you know why you're pulling over, say it's speeding. What is your mind like? Because I've always thought about that. Notice that cops don't just get right out of the car. Like they need almost that composure moment or two.
Well, yeah, it is a tactical moment. Sometimes they're calling the plate in, so there's a lot of stuff going on. You want to pull the car over in a safe spot, and we're getting into the technical weeds of it.
I know, but I've always been fascinated by that.
You pull a car over. You want to make sure that it's done in a safe spot. That's why there's times when officers will follow you before they put their lights on. When you know you're done.
I was wondering why you do that. So you don't do that just to mess with people. You're doing it because you need to pull over.
I'm not saying it's never been done to mess with people, but normally it's to make sure
you
that
didn't do that.
Spot.
Okay.
I'm not saying I've never done that, but
that's not
oftentimes the cop will get behind you, run the plate, check the car out, and then find a place that's safer to pull over.
Okay.
It's on the highway, and we know highways, and even on our other streets, they're dangerous places to stop cars. So we pull you over, and then we assess the car. We kind of determine how many people are in the car, call in the plate. let them know the location of that for officer safety. Make sure that we have an area of safety to get out of the car, so you can't get out without looking to make sure your car doesn't get smashed. And then decide whether you're going to approach the car from the left side or the right side. Now, there's options for both, and there's
why does that matter? I've never understood that either. Why sometimes they'll go to the left side or the passenger side versus the driver's side.
Well, a long time ago, it used to be just the driver's side approach,
right?
And that's what you would do. And as you walk up to the car, we generally tend to touch the trunk to make sure that the trunk's closed. People don't realize that because
No, I've never realized that.
Well, you want to make sure that there's nobody in. See, this is the imagination component of it playing out.
Right. This is fascinating to
me. So you make sure that you're blading yourself for safety.
Right.
And obviously, if you want to protect your firearm, but you want to be aware of it at all times because it's just a speeding ticket. But a lot of times, it's not just a speeding ticket because there could be other things going on in the car. So as you approach, you check the trunk to make sure that it's secure. Then as you approach, you look in the back seat. If I know there's a lot going on.
No, it's really fascinating to me because the idea of using your imagination like a what if. I mean, everybody. It's so funny, but we'll play that game. Would you rather or what if this happened and you finish the storyline? Like we'll have that kind of funny game with our 7-year-old at home. Yeah. But it's interesting to think of it from a crime prevention perspective.
From straight up from a safety perspective and a crime prevention. But yeah, you're right. So then we would approach the driver's side. Now, let's go back a second. The driver's side approach is one way to do it. I think for safer reasons, it's good to approach from the passenger side because you're not in the roadway.
Okay.
But in addition to that, there was an element of surprise. Okay. It's not really there anymore as much because now it's kind of normal for officers to
I also think, and
side.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but the general consensus is the driver is going to be approached. So the passengers kind of, not that they're in a panic, but they're sort of like, oh man, this is on you. Yeah. I'm just here. Right. So it's almost like a safer route too, I would think, going on the passenger side. Because I would think that the driver's a little bit more maybe neurotic, a little bit more nervous, would be more reactionary. I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
I'm using my imagination, Gary.
I know you are.
I'm trying to do my homework actively.
After this show, we're going to pull cars over on I-95 in the Connecticut area.
Yeah. So no one's going to stop
we're not
me.
Gonna do that.
No, we're not doing that.
So I think the passenger side approach gives a better view into the window too, whether there's a passenger in the car or not, because you can see the driver's hands more readily. And
that makes sense.
But there's still a risk. But so there's options for when you're going to approach from the right side and the left side. And then when you finally get up to the car, one of the first things an officer will ask you, I don't know whether you know, but what generally would you think?
Why do you think I'm pulling you over? Yeah, and I only know that because that happened one time.
Right. And you know why the officer asked that question?
Well, because I was in Vermont and I was speeding.
Okay, but why would an officer, do you think, get up to the car and say, do you know why I pulled you over?
I honestly don't know why you do that. I always thought it was, to be honest, don't get mad at me. I thought that was an intimidation factor. Right. I really did. I thought that was kind of like a sizing up, like, almost like, you're going to your room kind of a thing. From just the one time I've had that interaction with a state trooper, that's how it felt as a driver. It felt very like I'm the one in charge of the situation. I'm pulling you over. You did something wrong and you're almost being tested. Like, this isn't scary enough. You're now going to ask me why you're pulling me over.
I'll be honest with you, though.
Why do they ask that?
Because most times the cop forgets.
No, stop.
Because it's a long walk.
That's not true.
And we're checking the trunk and we're checking the passenger side. And by the time we get to the driver,
do you
know why I pulled you over? And when they say I was speeding, they're like, that's right, you were speeding.
That's it. You're like, thanks for jogging my memory. No, really, why do you ask that question? No, seriously.
Well, I think... Yeah, all kidding aside, I don't really know why. It's not an intimidating factor.
You're like, listen, I'm following protocol.
No, I think it probably has something to do with probably, it's not a confession because it's usually a ticket, but I think it kind of sets the stage.
Right, like, hey, what are we doing here? Acknowledgement and all of that. Yes. And then you can almost gauge where the driver is at. As well.
Yeah, it gives an opportunity to say.
You read body language, you hear their tone, you see how I would think from, again, I don't know, I'm not a cop, but that's why I would ask the question.
Yeah, and I think it's changed a little bit because I think that now the cops generally want to say why I pulled you over, right off the bat, because it just kind of sets the stage. I pulled you over because you were speeding. Because as you've seen in some videos of law enforcement, and that's why body cameras are so important and powerful, you see those motor vehicle interactions, and some of them are, traditionally fine.
Right.
Like you were speeding. Okay, am I going to get a ticket
those
or not?
never make it to the news.
Right.
Because
Well,
there's
yeah.
nothing, dare I say, nothing sexy about them.
Right. And so, but generally you want to kind of approach in that fashion. But behind all of that, whether you get a ticket or you don't get a ticket, because that's a whole nother show, what the officer is doing is also in his or her mind, practicing what if, always asking those questions of what if. And there's 100 questions you could ask. What if I'm approaching the car and the driver jumps out with a gun and starts charging me? What would I do? What would I do if the car took off? What would I do if the car backed into my car? What would I do if they don't roll down the window and they lock all the doors? It starts to...
That's like 100 different scenarios in a matter of 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is.
And you have an answer. At least a tentative plan in your head as to what to do.
Well, I think so, yeah. Those imaginations are not fully vetted plans.
Right, but they're at least thinking about it.
That's right.
You
And
have
it gets
a little
you off,
bit of versus just kind of going in blindly.
and it gets you off the thing of being surprised. The first time you think of something you don't want to, like I don't know, like watching a movie or a dress rehearsal, for something.
Yeah.
The first time, if you're in a play, the first time you're asked to do something, you don't want to be learning your lines.
Yeah.
And that's how it could happen so fast. So your imagination, your answer to what if may not play out, but at least it gets you thinking, so you're not surprised at the action. Like, what if I'm on a plane and the cabin's filled with smoke? Even just asking that question of yourself is pretty powerful.
Do you think, though, Gary, one of the reasons that people don't imagine, so on my show, whenever we talk about crime prevention, one of the things that I will hear from listeners all the time is, well, then I'm going to be inundated with being scared all the time. So every time I do anything, just you and me talking right now, if I really wanted to have my imagination hat on right now, I could be like, how in the world do I land this plane? How do I finish this conversation if Gary just starts choking right now? Now, I don't know why you would start choking right now. Maybe you have a coughing fit or whatever. And that's kind of the worry in people's minds, is if I start imagining for crime prevention or safety reasons, am I just going to be living in fear my whole life?
Yeah, I don't think so. I always say to them, no, I actually feel more empowered because I think about what if. Only because you've taught me to think what if, to be honest. But before that, I think that I lived more in fear because I just kind of was like, we'll see what happens. And then you're reacting in real time without any plans. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and it's that tendency to freeze because you've never seen it before.
Right.
But if you look at, I'll give you another example of it. If you were ever to ask for a raise, and I'm not saying you're going to go ask for a raise from your boss, but at some point you either asked for a job, prepared for a job, or wanted something from a boss. Let's say it's a raise, because I know I've asked for a raise. Very happy I don't need a raise. But if I were to do it, you pre-game it in your head.
Right.
You are imagining it. You are doing that what if scenario in your head.
But that's kind of because, again, you hope that you get the raise. So how do I get to the lottery win? That's because there's a positive spin on the raise.
There is, except for, well, what if he says this? What if they say that? What if they do this? What am I going to do if I go in to say it and they send me out the door? Now, again, it's a slight example, but it at least gets you from the freeze moment. So you can at least start to prepare your mind. It's more than just daydreaming. It's like pre-living a situation.
Yeah, I feel like those are two very different things because correct me if I'm wrong, but when you daydream to some degree, that's really never going to happen. Like a scenario is sort of like, oh man, I wish I was sitting in a field right now while you're in the middle of your work, like in your office. But you're not going to just poof and end up in a field. That's kind of daydreaming, if you will.
Yeah,
but I think when you're thinking more like, what if this were to happen, those scenarios could happen. They're a little more realistic.
Yeah, and That's exactly right. Daydreaming is like you're lying in a field and you're looking up at clouds and you're thinking of whatever.
Right. When you're in the middle of taking a test at school. Like, there's no way if I click my heels 3 times, I'm going to end up in a field of poppies. Right. You're going to have to finish the test, right? I'm just saying.
So true.
It's true. Like, that daydreaming is literally being like, oh man, anything to get out of here. But you're not going to get out of here. Versus when you're thinking actively about, well, what if something were to happen?
Yes.
That's just, I think, having kind of like a backup plan.
And you're right. And criminals do it too. So criminals will imagine, you think about it, criminals have committed the act twice, most criminals. If you're going to rob a convenience store, it's not like all of a sudden you haven't thought it through in your head. I'm going to have a gun. I'm going to walk in the door. I know what I'm going to say to the clerk. You've already imagined the scenario in your head. That's why, and it's probably for another show, that's why the power of disrupting someone's mindset is powerful in doing something different to get them off kilter, because in their mind the criminal has already played out how the scenario will go.
Right, they figured out all the different ways that this
now
would go.
if the clerk pulls out their own gun, granted that's changes the whole scenario, but if the clerk pulls out a baseball bat it changes what they're doing.
Right.
Or if there's a gate that comes down, it just changes the scenario. I would imagine from even a reporter perspective, there's a level of imagination in the job that you do.
Yeah, I think so, because you don't know how the story is going to end. I mean, so we're both investigating a case together. And, our goal is going to be a little bit different than yours. Yours is obviously from a public safety and making sure people have information. I think from our perspective, it's not just telling the story. It's also then, well, what do we do with this? So who would be the right person to talk to about it? So, for example, I mean, I hate to bring, this up, but I think probably one of the, if not the darkest days in Connecticut history was Sandy Hook. And, how do you make sure people at home know that we think it's still relevant, something to talk about, but also you're not bringing, just cop after cop after cop on to talk about it. So maybe you have a child psychologist come on, or maybe you have somebody who can help us to understand the mind of a criminal. I don't know. I'm just using an example. But yeah, there has to be it can't just be within the 24 hours of a story that we're telling. How do we continue the story, but also continue informing the public beyond just what would be surface information, the who, what, when, where, why, how? How do you get beyond just the standard story? Because that's, I think, how you become relevant, honestly, because you don't want to seek relevancy. You want to be relevant.
You're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. You do. You want to be relevant. But I think the other thing with a reporter, from a reporter's perspective, is you need the imagination of what you don't know to report on. Kind of summarizing what you said. So, like, if you are at a school incident and you really don't know what's going on, you are imagining based upon what you're seeing and your experiences, I would imagine.
Or like elections. Oh my gosh, elections are a perfect example of that, because so the day, poor Gary has seen this in real time, because I've called you before when I'm already getting ready, like, to go to bed, because I have to get ready for the show the next morning, and I have my Queen Amidala look.
Yes.
I think that's what we've called it, where I have
that's
to curl my hair.
That's what you called it. I said that's just a different look. Yes.
Right. It's because I have to curl my hair and everything, but I will be kind of tracking, because the next morning, I don't know who's going to win or lose. I don't know what that's going to mean for every town or city. So, like, the night before we get election results, that's exactly it. It's like, you have to play out every scenario. What if there's a recount? What if there was an upset? What if that's exactly it. We have to play every scenario and be ready for who it is, or you get beat on a story, basically.
Yeah, and that is your imagination. So that is exactly it. You're preparing your mind for work. So that you don't come in that morning and think, well, so-and-so won, and then go, oh my gosh, that didn't happen. And now you're kind of figuring it out. You have to, and that imagination is really what's strong and makes you decisive. So it's not the first time you've ever thought of it.
Right.
If there was a recount on an election and you never gave it any thought, you're just going to be scrambling for things that you've never thought of.
Right.
Before.
And you can see that. You can hear that, that there's not that preparedness. But I mean, how do you translate imagination into everyday life, Gary? So, like, one of the things I think I learned from you very early on in our friendship, and I do it now, and I know I'm kind of the cuckoo that goes into the nail salon, but I think years ago, you were like, hey, just know where all the exits are, for example.
Yeah. Yep.
So I went into my nail salon after talking to you about this years ago, and I said to them, where are all of your other exits? And they told me, and they have a little map on the wall as well. But immediately they're like, why? And I said, well, because if somebody were to come in, or if there were to be a fire at the front of the salon, I want to know how I can get out. I want to understand my options of getting out of the building. So like, that's something where I know where it is. I never have to bring it up again, but I know it. And when I walk in, I look, I see that the door is open. Great. Awesome. And I sit down and I get my nails done. And I've never had to use that back exit.
Right.
But it's important to know
and
it.
it's simple. So you're not, to your point earlier, you're not crippled by the thought of imagination and crime
Right.
prevention. It just takes a few seconds. I think the
Right.
key is understand that imagination works. Mm-hmm. Just at the beginning, you imagined what you would do if you won Powerball.
Yeah.
And maybe you do that, maybe you don't. Maybe you would win sometime. I noticed how you didn't say that I would share it with my co-host, but
Like
we'll
I
work on
said,
that.
I literally said I knew I would get hate and I would probably have nightmares, and then I'll come back next
You'll
week and
change
tell
it
you what
back.
I'll really
Yes,
do.
that's
Yeah,
right.
listen.
But I think it's if you take a few minutes every day to just do that, 30 seconds a day, just to imagine at one point during the day, what would happen if I'm on a train and what would I do if? And what if a person came on a bus and was disruptive? What if you're at the mall? We talked about your experience at the mall and there's a fight that breaks out. Where would I go? What would I do? 30 seconds a day is not a lot. We're in the studio right now. What if something happened? What would we do? It just takes a few seconds. Now, you might not be able to do it, but you're not surprised by it. And then the second thing that police officers do is, and we train them in this, is you mentioned identify two exits. Leave hands free. Be prepared to say, I don't need anything. And we'll talk about that in some upcoming show, I'm sure. But just leave behind anything but your life if something really bad happens. But if you don't talk through it and imagine it, you won't do it. And crucial to it all, we talk about it with police officers. It's the concept of getting off the X. And the X is a danger zone. So you use the example of a car stop and an officer is standing at the passenger side door of the car. That's the X. Be prepared as quick as you can to get off the X, because that's a danger zone where the bad person potentially could hurt you because they know where you're at. So even wherever you're at, your imagination should include that. Just get off the X. Get off where you're at. Move. Do something in that imagination. You're at the nail salon, something happens. Get up and do something.
Right. And just not waiting on that, which kind of connects to actually, one of the last episodes we did about the whole lizard brain and the squirrel dance and all of that.
That's right.
That is to some degree, kind of imagining as well, to make sure that you don't end up being lizard brain with a cell phone in your hand.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
That just kind of clicked for me right now.
and we're just tying them all in.
We're just tying them all in. So you may not be a cop or a journalist per se, but we everyday people should be, using our imagination, not just for the lottery.
No, just ask two words. What if?